Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Legionary Skull. Archaeologists in France discovered the skull of a Roman legionary who was killed during an epic battle over 2,000 years ago. The soldier was part of the Roman Gallic Wars, fought between the soldiers of Rome and a group of Celtic people known as the Gauls. While many people think of the Romans as the bad guys, the conquerors who tried to destroy the Gallic homeland to expand their empire, it could be argued that it is in fact the opposite. The Gauls left their homeland in France, moved across the Alps, and tried to expand their territory south through Italy and into Rome. This forced the Romans to go to battle to protect their own homeland, which led to almost 400 years of war. The major conflict started in 390 BC when the Gauls entered Etruria. Rome sent an army to drive them away, defeating them at the Battle of the Allia. They showed up again 90 years later, pillaging and looting Roman territory. But lacking serious discipline and leadership, the Gauls broke down and started fighting amongst themselves, ultimately destroying their own cause. It was around 223 BC that the Romans decided it was time to conquer the Gallic territories and put an end to the Gauls once and for all. Wars would continue until Julius Caesar, between 58 and 50 BC, who led the Romans in the official Gallic Wars in France and Belgium. Then, in the year 27 BC, the last of the Gauls were conquered. This legionary skull, found in France, was discovered with a sword straight through its head. This was a Roman soldier who died in battle fighting against the Gauls. Who do you think is the bad guy in this scenario, the Romans or the Gauls? Let me know in the comments below. Number 9. Cold case mummies. Scientists recently uncovered a pair of murder victims from 1,000 years ago. Researchers recently examined 3 ancient mummies from South America that had been stashed in various European museums since the late 19th century. They used 3D CT scans to look inside their bodies as part of a study on violence in pre-Columbian cultures. Shockingly, roughly 21% of male human remains discovered from pre-Columbian civilizations show evidence of extreme violence. Researchers wanted to know why, so they looked to mummies for answers. Dr. Andreas Nerlich from Munich said he and his team discovered traumas through their scans that would not have been identifiable otherwise. One of the mummies, which was taken from northern Chile and lived between 996 and 1147 AD, died between 20 and 25 years old. The 3D CT scans showed that he died after being struck on the head with immense force, then stabbed in the back. The second mummy they looked at, which came from southwest Peru, also died from massive trauma. Somebody hit him in the spine so hard that it dislocated his cervical vertebrae, and he died instantly. The third mummy the researchers studied was female, discovered in southern Peru as well. She died of natural causes, presumably after living a long life. It was an interesting study because the bodies were picked at random. Both men died of horrific violence, while the woman was able to live to old age. This is even more proof of just how violent and unpredictable living in ancient times really was. Number 8. Branding. Recent archaeological evidence has revealed something horrifying about ancient Egypt. Scientists already knew the Egyptians were shameless slave owners, especially the pharaohs. But now it looks like we have evidence of the ancient Egyptians branding human beings with a burning iron, just like branding cattle and livestock. Researchers say these people were not just property of the pharaoh, but they were branded to show their low status to the world. The evidence comes in 2 parts. The first is an ancient text from ancient Egypt referring to the sale and transfer of something, either cattle or human livestock. It's not exactly clear which. However, the sale and transfer documents made a point of detailing which cows or humans were marked and stamped and which were not. Secondly, a series of small branding irons were found dating back to 1292 BC. Almost a dozen branding irons have been found throughout Egypt, with the most recent being used in 656 BC. We know they were used for humans because the irons were too small for livestock and were very similar to the ones used by Europeans in the 19th century. The conclusion here is that the ancient Egyptians were just as heinous when it came to slavery as the civilizations that came after them. And now for number 7. But first, it's shout-out time! Big thank you to Ryan Hawes and Jared Quinney for supporting this channel. Have you subscribed yet? Be sure to hit that button and join the Origins Explained family. Number 7. The Maya spider monkey. At the ancient city of Teotihuacan in Mexico, archaeologists have just made a shocking discovery that could change history. It's also pretty disturbing. It's important to understand that we don't know who built Teotihuacan. Construction began around 200 BC by an unknown civilization of humans. About 500 years later, this city was a major metropolis with huge economic connections. They ruled a vast region of central Mexico at the same time the Maya ruled a huge kingdom in the jungles to the south. Researchers have always wondered what the relationship was between the two. Archaeologists from the University of California have just discovered the complete skeletal remains of a spider monkey. Even weirder, the spider monkey was found with the bones of a golden eagle and multiple rattlesnakes. They also found exquisite figures made from jade that came from the valleys of Guatemala. The spider monkey now represents the earliest evidence of primate captivity in the world. It could have been a diplomatic gift given to the people of Teotihuacan by the Maya. This changes history because it smashes the previous hypothesis that the Maya presence in Teotihuacan was largely restricted to small migrant communities. That obviously wasn't the case. The monkey is proof that there was a diplomatic relationship between these two powerful empires. But what did the mysterious people of Teotihuacan do with the tiny primate after seeing it for the first time? They sacrificed it to the gods. Number 6. The Lapita Cemetery. The first Polynesians migrated from Southeast Asia and into Polynesia over 3,000 years ago. For the first few centuries, they mostly kept to themselves and didn't do a lot of mixed breeding with people of other civilizations and cultures. That all changed after a few hundred years of peace. For example, on the island of Vanuatu, people from other places began to arrive. The Polynesians got there first, then people from New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and other places in the Pacific started to show up. DNA studies from graveyards have shown that within a few generations, the Polynesian people had totally changed in appearance as their bloodlines mixed with folk from other areas. But the full history is still extremely complicated. One of the biggest issues archaeologists have is that they don't understand what happened in the South Pacific. There is no clear map of migration, meaning we don't know who started on which island, where they went, and how the people reacted to one another. But there is a suggestion that the mixed breeding in the South Pacific may not have been entirely peaceful. At the Lapita Cemetery in Vanuatu, archaeologists uncovered headless skeletons in 68 graves. There is evidence here of mass casualty, with the original Polynesians having their heads violently removed from their torsos. It's not clear what happened, but it does seem like the people who found the Polynesians on the island were not very friendly. Number 5. Roman headhunters. Many ancient skulls excavated from the heart of Britain have revealed some gruesome truths to the Roman headhunters who once operated in the capital. Walbrook Stream in London was once a site for burials and ritual activities in the days of Roman-occupied Britain 2,000 years ago. It was near here that archaeologists found 39 skulls in 1988. They were excavated within sight of the Museum of London, but it was only recently that scientists used modern forensic techniques to study the skulls. They found that almost all of them belong to adult males. Many of them are scarred from wounds inflicted during battle, and many show evidence of decapitation by sword. In fact, it's possible that every single head excavated here was hacked off its body by a fatal blow. What does all of this have to do with headhunters? This is where things get a little gross. During the Roman occupation of Britain, gladiator battles were common. There was a Roman amphitheater in London where criminals would be executed. They would be given swords and forced to fight to the death. And the favorite finishing move of the gladiator was to remove the head. All these heads would then find their way into the hands of the public, who would take them home or trade them as decorations. People would put heads on spikes outside their houses or even display them on a shelf. It was a truly macabre phenomenon and was helped by headhunters who collected the trophies and sold them for a profit. Number 4. 76 stolen hearts. Archaeologists recently uncovered the bodies of 76 children in Peru. The children were victims of sacrifice. We know this because each and every one of them had their heart removed in a brutal ritual in Pampalacruz. This is an archaeological site where 323 child sacrifices have been discovered over the years. Almost all of them had their hearts removed, and they all appear to have been sacrificed between the years 1100 and 1200. According to archaeologist Gabriel Prieto, after the young ones were killed, they were buried in a stretched position with their feet pointing directly east. Finding a fresh new collection of 76 victims came as a huge shock to researchers. The people responsible for this were the Chimu, a powerful civilization inhabiting Peru prior to the Inca Empire. They were agriculturally based, growing enough food to feed their people, but they also worked with textiles and crafted beautiful trinkets out of gold and silver. The Chimu, much like many of the Mesoamerican cultures that lived in Peru, sacrificed human beings to appease their gods. But why they chose children, why it had to be Pampalacruz, and why they needed to extract the hearts is still a mystery. Number 3. German bog bones. Archaeologists in Germany recently discovered ancient cremated bones in a creepy bog. They found the bones in the Duvensee bog, which has been explored here and there by experts since the 1920s. But over the past century, researchers have only ever found pieces of flint, evidence of nut roasting, and bark mats used by primitive people in the Stone Age. It wasn't until October of 2022 that archaeologists found bog bones at the site, which was once used as a camping ground. Scientists believe the bones represent the oldest known burial ever found in Germany, at a whopping 10,500 years old. As you can imagine, most of the ancient body has decayed. Finding this old of a burial is unprecedented and a real treat for the archaeologists involved. They only found some charred remains of a thigh bone, and so we don't have too much information. Researchers don't know how they died, if they were wrapped in ceremonial bark or animal hide, or what kind of funerary rituals may have taken place. All anyone can say for sure is that the individual was cremated. There are very few human remains from the Mesolithic period that have been found in Europe. One of the only other similar discoveries came in Denmark and also showed evidence of cremation. It's believed the prehistoric people of Europe ritually cremated their dead. This could explain why there are so few burials found, as the idea of a graveyard didn't come until many centuries later. Harold Lubke with the Center for Baltic and Scandinavian Archaeology said burning the body was likely a central part of human burial rituals from that time. Number 2. Ring of Bones. Around 80 bodies were discovered in a huge Peruvian tomb at the ancient site of Pachacamac. These individuals were buried 1,000 years ago inside a perimeter of infant human remains. This is one of the most disturbing and unusual burial grounds ever uncovered in the country. The tomb was found not far from the capital of Lima, originally used by a group of pre-Incan people called the Xima. Not much is known about them, but one thing's for certain: they practiced extremely weird burial customs. The adult corpses found in the tomb were originally bundled in textiles, manipulated into the fetal position, and then organized in a tight group. Excavation leader Peter Eichhout says the fetal position likely represented rebirth. Out of the 80 bodies discovered, about half belong to babies. This suggests ritual sacrifice, as there's little chance 40 newborn babies all died at the same time by accident. They were placed in a large ring around the adults, almost as if the Xma were conducting some kind of demonic pagan ritual. The tomb also contained guinea pig bones, parts of alpacas, and dogs that had been sacrificed as offerings. Number 1. The bone flute. In prehistoric times, if you wanted to play music, you were going to need some animal bones. Some of the earliest musical instruments in the world were flutes, and they were almost exclusively carved from the bones of birds or even human beings. Researchers with Cotswold Archaeology were recently doing an excavation in Kent, England, when they found hidden human activity from between the Late Bronze Age and the medieval days. Excavations revealed ditches and pits, pottery shards from the Bronze Age, and artifacts from the Roman period. They even discovered evidence of an agricultural landscape stretching back over 2,000 years. One of the more interesting finds was a series of post holes that had once been used to hold up the foundation of a mystery structure, something rectangular in shape and probably built by the Anglo-Saxons. Then the researchers found a flute. an extremely rare bone flute belonging to the same family of instruments as the recorder you may have played in school. The flute was carved from the tibia shaft of a sheep or a goat, with 5 finger holes and a thumb hole underneath. Other than missing its mouthpiece, the flute is perfectly preserved. It may have come from as recently as the 12th century. Thanks for watching! What's your favorite discovery from today's video? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you later! Bye!